Last week, I did a video reacting to the clip where Shawn Ryan handed Gavin Newsom a gun. But now I've seen the full segment where they talk gun control, and it's worse than I expected. Gavin Newsom is trying to play both sides. He says he supports the Second Amendment, but everything he pushes undermines it. He wants you to believe he's pro-gun safety, but what he really is anti-2A. This video is going to break down everything he said, line by line, and show you how a slick politician like Newsom twists facts, spins stats, and hides behind every emotional manipulation to justify stripping away your rights. So, let's get into it.
I'm just curious. We see a lot of the cities that that you can't conceal carry, or it's extremely hard to get concealed carry, or you know, California being one of them. Yeah. Illinois, New York. I mean, do you think that everyday citizens carrying a gun reduces crime or increases crime?
I think the evidence suggests the opposite. It increases the likelihood of a gun death.
No shit, Sherlock. Of course, if more people are carrying guns, you might see more gun deaths, because guess what? Some of those gun deaths are criminals getting shot mid-crime by people defending themselves. But this is what Newsom does. He plays this slick little game of words. He doesn't say crime goes up. He says gun deaths go up. Why? Because that phrasing triggers your brain into thinking guns are the problem. But let's break that down. If you've got more guns in one state than the other, obviously the number of deaths involving guns is going to be higher in that state. That doesn't mean it's more dangerous. It just means the tools used are different. You know where the gun death rate is low? The UK. Know what they do have a lot of? Stabbings. They don't call it London anymore. They call it knife crime capital of the world. You've got acid attacks, machete rampages, and criminals robbing people with kitchen knives because guns are banned. So yeah, their gun deaths are low, but their violence, not so much. This is where Newsom's logic collapses. He hyperfixates on gun deaths as if that's the only metric that matters. People don't care if they're murdered with a gun, a knife, or a brick to the skull. They care that they were murdered. Now, let's talk homicide rates. The number of people who are actually killed, period. If Gavin's theory held any water, then states with easier access to concealed carry would have a sky-high murder rate. But that's not reality. Let's run the tape. New Hampshire, Utah, Idaho, Vermont, all of these states have permitless carry, meaning it's far easier to carry a gun than it is in California, and yet their murder rate is significantly lower than California's. California is literally #1 for gun control laws in the country and is one of the hardest states to get a carry permit. It isn't even in the top 20 for lowest murder rates. Now, am I saying if you give everyone a gun, the murder rate drops overnight? No. But what I am saying is that the presence of legal armed citizens does not automatically lead to more crime or more murders. The numbers prove it. And look, we can toss charts and stats around all day, but in the real world, let me give you a scenario. A woman's walking down the street. It's dark. She's being followed. She knows what's about to happen. Do you think she's stopping in that moment to check the homicide rate of California versus Utah? Hell no. She wants one thing and one thing only, a gun. Because when a man corners her with a knife or tries to drag her into an alley, stats don't mean shit. The only thing that matters is her ability to fight back. This is the problem with politicians like Newsom. They live in ivory towers of policy and press conferences. Meanwhile, the rest of us live in a world where danger is real and seconds count. And since we're talking data, here's a number for you straight from the Texas Department of Public Safety. In 2022, there were 46,330 total criminal offenses in Texas. Of those, only 230 involved people who legally had a license to carry. That is 0.496%, less than half of 1%. That tells you everything you need to know. The people legally carrying firearms aren't the problem. So while Gavin is out here waving his stats around like a flag, trying to scare people with phrases like gun deaths, real people in real situations are relying on guns to stay alive. This ain't theory. It's not a debate club. Bro, this is life. And the Second Amendment protects your right to face it armed.
And you look at all the states with the most comprehensive gun safety reforms, they have lower gun death rates than states with weaker gun laws. And there's a correlation there. California is one of the lowest gun death rates in America. The highest murder rates in the country tend to be red states, significantly so. You look at the murder rate, 8 of the top 10 murder rates per capita in the country are all red states.
Well, I thought Chicago was the number one.
No, well, as cities, you'll have different experiences, but at state levels, gun safety, from our perspective, saves lives, and we have the data to bear that out.
This dude is so damn slimy. It's unreal. Watching him talk stats is like watching a magician do card tricks. He's counting on you not noticing where the misdirection is happening. So let's start with this whole red states have the highest murder rate talking point. This is a favorite trick in the anti-gun playbook. Take a broad stat, strip it of all nuance, and throw it out like it's gospel. Here's what Gavin doesn't tell you. When they say gun deaths, they're lumping in everything: murders, accidents, law enforcement, shootings, and unknowns into one big scary number to freak you out. Let me break it down for you with actual numbers. In 2023, 58% of all gun-related deaths in the US were self-deletions. 27,300 people. Only 38% were homicides. 17,927 people. The rest were law enforcement related. That's 604. And then accidental deaths, 463. And undetermined, 434. So when you say red states have higher gun death rates, what he's really saying is they have a higher self-deletion rate. Look at the states like Utah, Idaho, and Montana. Super pro-gun permitless carry, low murder rate. But yes, higher self-deletion rate. And that's tragic. But it has nothing to do with concealed carry, gang violence, or bad gun laws. It's a different issue entirely, and it's dishonest to conflate the two. And let's not pretend California's lower self-deletion rate has anything to do with Gavin Newsom's anti-gun laws. It's got more to do with weed, women, and weather. You've got sunshine, beaches, and wine country. People there aren't offing themselves at the same rate because they're not locked in a snow-covered cabin half the year like they are in Montana probably. So no, Gavin, your laws aren't the reason your gun death rate is lower. It's lifestyle factors, it's climate, it's culture. And again, self-deletion doesn't equal crime. Now, here's the part he really doesn't want to talk about, and he glosses over it fast when Shawn brings it up. Shawn says,
Well, I thought Chicago was the number one.
No, well, as cities, you'll have different experiences.
yeah, no shit. Because once you zoom in, you realize this isn't a red state versus blue state issue. It's a blue city issue. Let me hit you with the data. The Crime Prevention Research Center found that the worst 2% of counties in America account for 56% of all murders. Anybody want to take a guess what those counties have in common? They're almost all Democrat-run cities inside red states. Let's name them. Mississippi, Jackson, blue. Louisiana, New Orleans, blue. Alabama, Birmingham, blue. New Mexico, Albuquerque, blue. Missouri, pick one. St. Louis, Kansas City are both drowning in blue policy. These cities are progressive strongholds. They've got the woke DAs, the soft on crime prosecutors, the anti-cop rhetoric, and the restrictive gun laws for law-abiding citizens. Yet, they lead the nation in murder rates. Red states' homicide rates often drop significantly when Democrat-run cities are removed from the numbers. Even Cap Action, a left-leaning think tank, had to admit it. Red state cities had higher rates of gun homicides, larger increases in gun homicides from 2018 to 2021. Translation, the gun violence isn't coming from red America, it's coming from blue America inside red America. So when Gavin stands up there and says 8 of the top 10 murder states are red, what he's really doing is blaming the entire state for what's happening in a handful of Democrat-run urban war zones. It's like blaming the whole forest because the cabin caught fire. And look, if we're being real, Gavin doesn't want to unpack that complexity because it ruins his entire narrative. He needs the broad brush. He needs the fear, because once you start breaking this down city by city, county by county, it becomes painfully clear that this is not the gun laws that make places safer. It's the culture, it's the policies, it's the leadership. And that is something Gavin Newsom absolutely doesn't want you looking too closely at.
You look at the common sense gun safety laws that California started establishing in the 90s. You look at our gun death rate from the 90s till today, significant reduction nation-leading reduction in the gun death rate. So
What are you even talking about, Gavin? Seriously, this dude acts like California's gun control fairy dusted its way into single-handedly lowering crime. No, man. The entire country saw a drop in gun violence since the 90s. That decline wasn't unique to California. It was national. So your laws aren't some golden ticket to safety. Let's talk facts, not Newsom spin. According to Pew Research, national rates of gun homicides and other violent gun crimes are strikingly lower now than during their peak in the mid-1990s, compared with 1993, the peak of U.S. gun homicides. The firearm homicide rate was over 49% lower in 2010. The victimization rate for other violent crimes with a firearm, assaults, robberies, sex crimes, was 75% lower in 2011 than in 1993. So no, Gavin, California isn't some shining exception. Everywhere got safer. Know why? Because the 90s were the damn wild, wild west. We're talking gang violence at all-time highs, the crack epidemic, drive-bys as casual as corner store runs, and you had New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, all war zones in their own right. So yes, crime dropped after the era, but to suggest that it was because of your gun control laws is like crediting a rain dance for the end of a hurricane season. The decline was already happening across the board. What you're doing is cherry picking a trend and slapping your name on it like it's your mixtape. And here's another thing. Nearly all of that dramatic decline happened in the 1990s before most of your modern gun laws even went into effect. So tell me again how your policies magically caused a decades-long national crime to drop. Oh, right. They didn't. This is what Newsom does. He grabs onto a national trend, isolates the state, and sells it like it's a direct result of California's restrictions. But when you zoom out and actually look at the nationwide timeline, the story falls apart fast. You can't just claim the benefit of a broader trend and ignore the fact that everyone else got safer too, even the states you love to throw under the bus. So no, Gavin, California didn't save America. The 1990s ended. That's what happened.
That's the prison to which I'm into the data, I'm into the evidence. I'm also deeply mindful and respectful of the Second Amendment and people's constitutional rights.
Oh boy, this guy is so full of shit, it's leaking out of his suit collar. This is the same Gavin Newsom who now wants you to believe he's respectful of the Second Amendment. That's cute, because this man has spent decades doing everything in his power to gut it. Let's roll the tape. Back when Newsom was a mayor of San Francisco, he didn't just support a gun control law. He pushed for Proposition H. Proposition H was a total ban on handguns in the city. Not restricted, banned. And it didn't stop there. He wrote a letter to the Board of Supervisors demanding a mandatory minimum of 90 days in jail for anyone caught with a gun, even if it was just a gun in their house. Let that sink in. This is the same guy now trying to tell you, I respect the Second Amendment, while he literally tried to throw people in jail for simply owning a handgun in their own house. We're not even talking about AR-15s here. We're talking about handguns. We're not talking about AR-15s here. We're not talking about high-capacity magazines or weapons of war. We're talking about basic handguns in the home for self-defense. And Proposition H? Yeah, that got overturned in court, because it was so wildly unconstitutional that even California courts couldn't keep a straight face while defending it. But Newsom didn't stop there. He took it all the way to Supreme Court. And during the landmark District of Columbia v. Heller case, you know, the one that confirmed the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to own a firearm, Newsom's administration joined an amicus brief arguing the Second Amendment does not protect an individual right and imposes no barrier to state or local regulation of firearms. So let's recap real quick. He backed out of a total handgun ban, tried to jail people for owning guns in their own homes, filed briefs claiming the Second Amendment doesn't protect individual rights, and still had the nerve to call that gun safety. And now, he's got the gall to sit across from Shawn Ryan and pretend like he's just some middle-of-the-road, data-driven guy who loves the Constitution? Bro, get the entire out of here. This isn't a case of someone evolving or changing their stance. This is a case of someone who spent years fighting to strip Americans of their rights. And now that it's politically inconvenient, he's trying to memory hold the whole goddamn thing. Don't let the calm tone and fake smile fool you. He didn't just oppose the Second Amendment, he fought it in courts, in policy, and in writing. So no, Gavin, you don't respect the Second Amendment, you just don't respect that we remember.
Right.
You know, and
But a convicted felon, you know, someone that has had a violent, dangerous past, someone who's a domestic abuser, And I'd like to red flag some of those folks. I mean,
I can't argue that.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, here's the problem with that. Convicted felons are already banned from owning guns, so what the hell are we even talking about? This is one of those sleazy rhetorical tricks politicians like Newsom love to pull. He says something that sounds bold and responsible, like he's just now proposing we red flag violent felons, as if that's not already a thing. Spoiler alert, it's already illegal for felons to own firearms under federal law. It's been that way for decades, but the casual viewer hears that and thinks, wait, felons can buy guns? And boom, Newsom's narrative just got a free bump from public ignorance. That's the play. He's not making policy, he's doing theater. And you know what makes it even more ridiculous? This is coming from the same guy who leads a state where actual violent criminals don't even get punished. California is one giant revolving door for offenders, especially in places like LA and San Francisco. Smash and grab robbery, walk. Assault, walk. Armed robbery, well, let's talk about equity and root causes first. But when it comes to gun violence and fixing the underlying roots of that, oh no, it's more gun control. So don't come in here trying to act like you're Captain Accountability when your policies actively let criminals run wild with no consequence. And then in the same breath, try to talk tough about red flagging felons who can't legally own guns anyway. Nah, Gavin, miss me with all of this shit, because when it comes to law-abiding citizens who actually want to own guns legally, you make it exceedingly hard. You throw up every barrier you can. You want them fingerprinted, registered, taxed, trained, licensed, background check, and in some cases you even tried to throw them in jail for just owning a handgun in their home. But the actual criminals, y'all give them a slap on the wrist and a fresh tote bag. So don't act like you're drawing some moral line in the sand here. You're not protecting people. You're just feeding the lie that gun control somehow equals public safety when it clearly doesn't, especially not in your state. But hey, do you, boo-boo?
You look at, I'm not a polling guy, but it's interesting when you look at gun safety polling, like Fox News polls, and these sort of top 4 controversial issues, they're overwhelmingly supported bipartisan support for some of these safety measures. And I just think people demagogue this, they demagogue on all sides. But that, it's not inuring to a safer country.
Like, you ever notice these guys love to say, I'm not a polling guy, and then right before they pull out a poll to back up their argument? That's exactly what Newsom does here. I'm not into polling, but let me reference a Fox News poll so it sounds bipartisan and official? Yeah, okay. Let me break this down. First off, the polls he's talking about, they're vague on purpose. They ask innocent sounding feel-good questions like, do you support common sense gun safety? Should dangerous people have access to guns? Who's gonna say no to that? It's like asking someone if they support keeping kids safe. Of course they'll say yes. Then they turn around and say, see, Americans support gun control, and roll it into some sweeping policy that has nothing to do with the original question. That's the sleight of hand. That's how they do it. It's the same exact play Newsom just ran when he said, I'd like to red flag convicted felons. Sounds reasonable, right? So reasonable even Shawn Ryan said, I can't argue with that. But guess what? Convicted felons are already prohibited from owning guns. They've already been red flagged. Newsom just phrased it like it's not already a law to make it sound like he's bringing something new and necessary to the table. It's rhetorical manipulation, and that's what these polls do. They count on people not knowing the nuances. And while Newsom is pretending there's overwhelming bipartisan support for more gun control, let me hit you with some actual polling data. The stuff he doesn't want to talk about. Gallup, October 2023, support for an assault weapons ban dropped to 47%, its lowest point since Gallup started asking in 1994. Morning Consult, Politico, May 2024, when voters were asked whether banning high-capacity magazines would actually reduce mass shootings, only 34% said a lot. So, while he's cherry-picking feel-good polling language, the real numbers show that Americans aren't buying into the bans like they used to. And here's the part that really pisses me off. The Second Amendment is not supposed to be up for a popularity contest. It's not a bipartisan issue. It's a constitutional right, period. It doesn't matter if 51% of people say they want to ban your rifle. They don't get to vote away your rights. That's the entire point of the Bill of Rights in the first place, to protect the individual from mob rule. But Newsom doesn't care about that. He wants this issue divided, because if you're divided along party lines, you stop thinking for yourself. And once your thoughts are dictated by group identity, whether it's red, blue, or whatever, you lose your ability to engage with the nuance. You stop asking real questions and you just pick a side. And Newsom, he's counting on that. He knows if he keeps the language vague and emotional, he can get even good people like Shawn Ryan to nod along without realizing they're agreeing with a policy that already exists. Or worse, one that violates fundamental rights. Hell, even I'd agree if someone asked, should we keep guns away from dangerous people? Of course. But define dangerous, define high capacity, define assault weapon. They never do, because they can't. And that's by design. And just for the record, I'd even argue that if someone has done their time, paid their debt to society, and proven they've changed, maybe there should be a pathway for them to get their rights back, including the right to bear arms, because rights aren't privileges. They're not for perfect people. They're for the free people.
I mean, there's no other country in the world that has this kind of gun violence. And it suggests we're doing something very differently than the rest of the world. Everyone has mental health problems. Mm-hmm. It's not unique to the United States of America. It's not about that. Mm-hmm. That's not the issue. I just think it is the accessibility.
Here we go again with this broken record again. Gavin Newsom loves to say there's no other country in the world that has the kind of gun violence we do. Like that ends the conversation. But here's what he conveniently leaves out. America has more guns than any country in the world. We're not just leading, we're blowing every other nation out of the water. Over 400 million civilian-owned firearms. That's about 120 guns per 100 people. And yet, despite all those guns, our total gun death rate, which includes homicides, self-deletions, and accidents, is about 13.7 per 100,000 people. That's less than 0.014% of the population per year. So if Gavin's theory were right that gun access alone causes gun violence, then the United States should be an absolute war zone. We should be walking through piles of brass casings just to grab cups of coffee, but we're not. Now, let's flip it. Take countries with gun access, but low gun violence. Switzerland has 27.6 guns per 100 people. Firearm homicide rate, 0.5 per 100,000. Czech Republic allows concealed carry with a permit. Firearm homicide rate, 0.06 per 100,000. Finland, roughly 38% of the households own guns. Yet their gun death rate is still under 1 per 100,000. So what does that tell you? It's not just about access, it's about culture, it's about enforcement, it's about how society treats mental health, crime, and personal responsibility. But Newsom doesn't want to talk about that, because then he'd have to admit that the issue is complex, that it can't be fixed with a bumper sticker slogan and a new gun ban. He says mental health isn't the problem because other countries have mental health problems too. Yeah, they do. But they also don't have soft on crime prosecutors, media glorification of mass shooters, fatherless households, or the level of cultural breakdown we're seeing in America's cities. But go ahead, Gavin. Blame accessibility as if the guns are just floating down the street like tumbleweeds. Never mind the fact that the people doing most of the shooting aren't buying them legally in the first place. Here's the truth. More access doesn't automatically mean more violence. If it did, America would be in ashes by now, but we're not. And the countries that prove that point, they completely dismantle your narrative. So stop pretending this is about doing something different. You're not solving the problem, you're simplifying it to sell fear.
Rates are off the charts in the United States because of the simple access as well.
No, Gavin, that's a lie, dressed up as a mic drop. Self-deletion rates in the US are not off the charts, not globally, not even close. You know where we rank according to the World Health Organization? 14.1 per 100,000. That doesn't even crack the top 20 worldwide. Lithuania, 21.6. South Korea, 21.2. Russia, 21.1. Japan, 14.9. United States, 14.1. Now here's the kicker. Every single country I just listed has stricter gun laws than we do. So if access to guns was the reason for high deletion rates, why are countries with tight gun control topping the charts? I'll tell you why. Because desperate people find a way. If someone's in that dark place and they don't have access to a gun, they'll find another method. That's not speculation. That's backed by research from your own side. Even RAND, the anti-gun left's go-to think tank, admits it. Some people prevented from attempting self-deletion with a firearm will substitute another lethal means. That's called method substitution, and it completely destroys this lazy narrative that removing guns somehow solves self-deletion. The data speaks for itself, but Gavin doesn't want to deal with nuance. He wants to scare you into thinking that if we just reduce excess, the problem magically disappears. It doesn't. And honestly, if we're going to talk about saving lives, maybe we should focus on the actual root causes of self-deletion. Mental health treatment, addiction recovery, economic despair, social isolation. That's where the real work is. But that's messy. It takes time, money, and leadership. So instead, he points the finger at an inanimate object and pretends that banning it will cure human suffering. That's not leadership, it's deflection. Self-deletion is a tragedy, but it's not a gun problem. It's a human problem. And no amount of disarming law-abiding citizens will fix what's broken in someone's soul. So stop pretending that a blanket gun grab is gonna cure despair. If anything, all it does is take tools away from people who might one day use them to protect their lives, not in them.
Man, lived experience, former mayor, living in cities, dense urban centers, and looking at the evidence in California, I'm for, as I refer to it, common sense gun safety.
Yeah, don't let him slide that one past you. He name drops his lived experience as former mayor like that's supposed to give him moral authority on what qualifies as common sense. Let me remind you what this version of common sense looked like when he was a mayor of San Francisco, banning handguns outright, jailing people for 90 days just for owning one in their own home. So when Gavin Newsom says common sense gun safety, just understand he means banning your rights and throwing you in a cage if you disagree. That's not common sense. That's authoritarianism with a PR team.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, I know you want certain weapons restricted and, there's the California compliant versions of everything, but it's really hard for people to get a concealed carry permit in California.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, because the idea of, I think there's a cultural construct in California that people just don't want people running around with concealed carry. Folks you're running into in a restaurant or bar, or you're on the BART in Bay Area Rapid Transit, or you're in the school or in the playground, and everyone running around that's got a gun, and the good guys from the bad guys. I think there's just sort of a cultural mindset around that, a concern around that. We allow for it. There's a process. There's, law enforcement has a process. By the way, we exempt law enforcement from these gun safety laws in the vast majority of cases, along the lines of what you're suggesting as it relates to our veterans and military. There are exceptions to many of the rules that we advance. But on concealed carry, that's been a principle that we just believe in, a permit process that's, admittedly very comprehensive.
And it's what your state wants.
This is an absolute lie. And this is why I say Gavin Newsom is a professional gaslighter in a $5,000 suit. He says it's just the culture in California, that Californians don't want people running around with concealed carry. Man, get the hell out of here with that. Before the court's Bruin decision, getting a concealed carry permit in places like LA County or Santa Clara was basically impossible unless you were connected, rich, or had some political juice. There was no cultural construct. It was a legal chokehold, one that Newsom helped engineer. Then Bruin came down and suddenly your hands got forced. Blue counties couldn't hide behind may issue anymore. They actually had to approve carry permits. And what happened? In deep blue Santa Clara County, permit approvals jumped by 774% between 2022 and 2023. 774%. You still want to tell me Californians don't want concealed carry? No, Gavin. What they didn't want was to beg unelected bureaucrats for permission to exercise a right. And once that bureaucrat wall got torn down, the floodgates opened because people want their rights. Your whole narrative collapsed like a folding chair at a frat party. And let's talk about that stuttering mess of a response you gave Shawn Ryan when he asked why it was so hard to get a permit. You weren't tripping over your words because the mic glitch. You were stammering and stuttering and scraping for shit because you were trying to come up with a lie. And you knew it. You sat there trying to spin it as comprehensive. Newsflash, comprehensive is political code for nearly impossible. That's why Bruin even had to happen in the first place, because states like yours and New York rigged the system to make sure regular people couldn't carry. And then what did you do? You turn around and proudly say, we allow exemptions for law enforcement and military? Yeah, genius, that's not how the Second Amendment works. The Second Amendment wasn't written for the government. It was written to protect the people from the government. It's not about giving rights to those already carrying under state power. It's about making sure regular citizens aren't defenseless when government goes too far. But you don't care about that. You care about control. That's why you're totally fine with cops and soldiers having guns, but not the single mom in the sketchy neighborhood, not the working class dude trying to protect his family, not the elderly person worried about being targeted. You divide the public on purpose. You carve out a little permission slip for veterans so you don't alienate them, but then you slam the door shut on everyone else. Why? Because you think you know better. Because to you, the state is sacred and the people are just variables to be managed. You're not protecting anyone, Gavin. You're preserving elitism. In your California, the government gets to carry, but the people get to beg. And that's why we fight, because no matter how much you dress it up, this isn't about safety. It's about power and who you believe deserves to have it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I do what I do, because people like Gavin Newsom get on massive platforms, spin half-truths wrapped in slick language, and hope nobody digs deep enough to call them on their bullshit. They smile, talk common sense, drop vague polls, and pretend like they're just trying to keep everybody safe, while actively working to strip rights from the very people who need them the most to keep themselves safe. They've got armed security, gated homes, and exemptions for their friends in government. But you get red tape, regulations, and the privilege of asking permission to protect your own damn life. That's not gun safety. That's elitism hiding behind a podium. So no, Gavin, you don't get to say you support the Second Amendment while doing everything in your power to destroy it. You don't get to pat yourself on the back for common sense laws when the people living under them are being denied basic rights. You don't get to rewrite history and act like you were never the guy pushing a total handgun ban in San Francisco. We see you, we remember, and we're not letting it slide because the Second Amendment isn't up for debate. It's not up for polling, and it damn sure isn't something you get to redefine just because you feel like it. This is about freedom. This is about accountability. And this is about making damn sure that people who lie about our rights don't get the last word. And if you want to make a statement louder than any poll, check out my Defend America collection. Available right now, shop.mrcolionnoir.com. I'll put a link in the description section of this video. This collection was built around one idea, that the AR-15 isn't just a rifle. It is a symbol of patriotism, self-reliance, and the absolute refusal to let politicians like Gavin Newsom dictate who gets to be free and who doesn't. So whether it's a hoodie, a t-shirt, or a hat, wear it like armor. Because in a world full of controlled narratives and elitist double standards, sometimes your shirt has to speak before you do. So get yours at shop.mrcolionnoir.com. Defend your rights, defend your voice, and defend America. If you're tired of the lies, if you're tired of the spin, and if you're ready to stand up and call this out for what it really is, welcome to the fight. One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together, we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.